I remember growing up, right? And one of the things that was so prominent in that time was storytelling. We would sit around with our friends and we'll talk about John and Mary stories, and even our parents sometimes would tell us stories. Our grandparents would tell us like history stories, and that's how you got to know about like the traditions of the land, like the juju, which juju was coming out from where, and all these different things. But I was just reflecting on that, and I think that that is missing in this our day and age. Now we have phones, we call each other, we talk about different things, and like, yes, the history that we talk about is like related to our childhood and things like that. But it's very easy to sit and talk about history with people like your peers, right? Or people that are older than you. But we rarely get to do that with our children, telling our children how we grew up. The only times the child might hear how you grew up will be like in those our days we used to eat like this, and like just trying to teach them a lesson to show them, hey, you need to be grateful. So that is the only time that you reflect on your history. But this morning, I want to challenge you to try to incorporate more of your stories into the lives of your children. Telling them the story of like how you grew up, telling them the stories of your parents and your grandparents, the ones that you know, right? Because as parents, it is very, very easy to make it a point to teach our children a lesson through the thou shall not method. Don't do this, don't do that. When I was growing up, I never did this to my parents, and all these different things. But I think that the lesson for our children is more in our experiences and our stories than they are in the rules and the regulations that they put down. For example, let's look at the Bible. The Bible is filled with so many different stories, right? And through these stories, in these stories, you learn about faith, you learn about finances, you learn about boundaries, you learn about so many different aspects. And these stories allow you to read the same story and learn like 10 different lessons from it. And that is what the story of our lives are meant to do for our children. Tell them that, oh, this is how I grew up, because you don't know where the child is going to get the lesson from. You can be telling them the story and you think that the punchline is one thing, whereas for them the punchline was another thing. And you also give them an opportunity to discern through your stories, not necessarily what you are saying, but the feeling that you had as you were telling that story. They can hear the sadness in your voice, they can hear the empathy in your voice, and that is what they are able to relate to and to understand. Like, oh, this is how my dad grew up, it must have been a struggle. Instead of you saying, oh, it was such a struggle of me growing up, it's about like just telling them, oh, this is how I grew up. And then the child in themselves, they will realize, oh, it must have been really hard for this person to have grown up this way. I think that that is something that is really, really important. And we can sit with our children around the table in the little moments that we have and tell them these stories so that they can get like these great life lessons from it. And not only stories about us, but also stories about our parents, stories about our grandparents. Some of us don't really know a lot of stories about our parents or grandparents because nobody told us. But let's try to break that chain and try to incorporate our lives into our children and bring them into our history and tell them these stories so that it can help them, but also it brings them closer, because they get to understand how we grew up and understand why we are even setting some rules the way we're setting, why we are the way we are, and they better understand us and we have a better relationship with them.